Before we begin, if you are listening to this or engaging with this message, I invite you to pause, like, subscribe, and share this with someone whose soul is ready to awaken. You are not here by accident. Your support helps spread a message that has the power to transform lives, perhaps even save them. Now take a moment. Close your eyes if you can. Breathe in deeply. What you are about to receive is not merely information. It is not just another self-help theory to add to your collection of intellectual concepts. It is a transmission. It is a call from the higher part of yourself, the part that has been waiting patiently for eons for you to remember who you really are. What if I told you that within you right now, at this very second, exists a perfect blueprint for your life? A divine pattern that holds the key to radiant health, overflowing abundance, unshakable joy, and true fulfillment. What if the struggles, the limitations, the heartbreak, and the challenges you face are not your true reality? What if they are simply shadows, illusions cast by a temporary disconnect from this higher design within? This is not wishful thinking. This is not mystical fantasy. This is the profound, scientific truth that the great spiritual teacher Emmet Fox dedicated his life to sharing. It is the truth that each of us carries within our consciousness a divine pattern, a perfect template. When we align with it, when we embody it, it transforms not just our inner world, but our entire physical experience. This session is a guide. It is a reminder. It is a sacred map back to that design. Today, in this first part of our journey, you are going to discover the nature of this pattern and the science of the consciousness that projects it. You are going to remember the magnificent being you were always meant to be. Deep within the fabric of your being lies something extraordinary. It is something that the vast majority of humanity goes their entire lives without ever truly discovering. It is not hidden because it is meant to be a secret. God has no secrets. It is hidden only because we have been taught to look everywhere except the one place where it resides within our own consciousness. This divine pattern is not something you need to go out and acquire. You cannot buy it. You cannot earn it through labor. It is not a reward for good behavior, and it is not a prize reserved for the saints and mystics on the mountain tops. It is your birthright. It is your true nature. It is the very essence of who you are beneath the layers of fear, conditioning, and limitation that have accumulated like dust over the years. Let us use an analogy to understand this. Imagine that you are a magnificent cathedral, a structure of breathtaking beauty, with soaring arches that reach toward the heavens, brilliant stained glass windows that turn sunlight into a kaleidoscope of color, and a vast, sacred space filled with peace. But imagine that for years, perhaps for a lifetime, you have been living in the basement of this cathedral. You have been living in the dark, damp, cramped quarters of the cellar. You have forgotten about the sanctuary upstairs. You have forgotten the light. You believe that the basement, with its shadows, its limitations, its cold stone walls, is the entirety of your existence. You try to decorate the basement. You try to make the basement comfortable. But you remain in the dark. The cathedral exists in its full glory, whether you are aware of it or not. It is there right now. Its bells are ready to ring. Its light is ready to shine. But your experience of life is determined entirely by where you choose to place your attention and make your home. The divine pattern is the architect's perfect blueprint for that cathedral. It contains every detail. It holds every measurement. It accounts for every element needed for the structure to stand in its full magnificence. But here is what makes this truth so powerful. You are simultaneously the cathedral, the blueprint, and the builder. Emmet Fox understood this profound truth. He taught that we do not need to build our good from the outside in, we need to release it from the inside out. He knew that when we align our thoughts, our beliefs, and our daily actions with this higher design, we do not just improve our lives in a superficial way. We transform them completely. We move from surviving to thriving. We move from limitation to expansion. We move from the law of averages to the law of grace. The divine pattern contains the template for perfect health. Understand this clearly. It is not just the absence of disease. It is radiant vitality. It is energy that flows freely through every cell of your body. It is a physical form that serves as a perfect, compliant vehicle for your soul's expression. The divine blueprint knows nothing of age, decay, or weakness. Those are concepts of the human mind, the basement mind. The blueprint knows only life and life abundant. This pattern contains the blueprint for true abundance. We are not speaking merely of money. Though money is a necessary part of modern life and is included in the plan, we are speaking of a richness of experience. We are speaking of meaningful relationships, purposeful work, and the deep, abiding satisfaction that comes from living in alignment with your highest nature. The divine pattern does not know lack. It does not know recession. It does not know poverty. It knows only infinite supply, ever flowing, ever available. It holds the design for authentic happiness, not the fleeting pleasure that comes from a new toy or a temporary thrill, but the deep, abiding joy, the peace that passes all understanding, that comes from knowing who you truly are. And perhaps most importantly, the divine pattern contains the blueprint for your unique contribution to the world. Just as every snowflake has a distinct and perfect design, your divine pattern is unlike anyone else's. God never repeats himself. There is no standard issue in the divine mind. Your pattern holds the key to your special gifts, your particular way of serving, and the unique light that only you can bring to this plane of existence. If you do not express your pattern, that aspect of God remains unexpressed forever. Understanding this pattern is not an intellectual exercise. You cannot find it in a textbook. It is a recognition. It is a remembering of what you have always known at the deepest level of your soul. When Fox spoke of this divine design, he was not asking people to believe in a strange dogma or accept a creed on blind faith. He was inviting them to recognize what was already true. He was asking them to wake up. This recognition often comes in moments of stillness. It happens in the quiet spaces between your thoughts. It happens when the constant, frantic chatter of the mind subsides and you touch something vast, silent, and peaceful within. You might feel it during a sunset that takes your breath away. You might feel it in the innocent laughter of a child. You might feel it in a sudden flash of creative inspiration. Or you might feel it in the simple, quiet awareness that you are more than your problems, more than your history, and more than any label the world has placed upon you. The divine pattern is not static. It is not a rigid mold you must force yourself into. It is alive. It is dynamic. It is constantly unfolding. It is a living intelligence that knows exactly what is needed in each moment for your highest good and greatest joy. It responds to your recognition. It grows brighter with your attention. This is why we teach that embodying the divine pattern is not about forcing, struggling, or outlining exactly how things must happen. It is not about willpower. The human will is the tool of the basement dweller. Embodying the pattern is about alignment. It is about attunement. It is about allowing. It is about becoming a clear pane of glass through which the divine light can shine without distortion. When you truly understand that this pattern exists within you, everything changes. You stop seeing yourself as a victim of circumstances. You stop believing you are a cork bobbing on the ocean of fate. You recognize yourself as a co-creator with the divine. You realize that you do not have to figure everything out with your limited intellect. You begin to trust the wisdom that flows from a deeper source. The divine pattern is your true identity. It is your authentic self. It has been waiting patiently for you to remember. Today, we begin the journey of not just understanding this pattern, but living it. To truly embody the divine pattern, we must move from the mystical to the practical. We must understand the mechanics of how reality is created. We must understand the science of consciousness. Emmet Fox was a pioneer because he bridged the gap between religious faith and mental science. He recognized that consciousness is not just something we have, it is what we are. It is the very substance from which our experience is created. It is the medium through which the divine pattern expresses itself. Modern science is only now beginning to catch up with what spiritual teachers and metaphysicians have known for centuries. Consciousness is fundamental. It is not produced by the brain. It is not confined to the body. It is the fundamental reality from which all physical experience emerges. Think of consciousness as a movie projector and your life, your circumstances, your body, your bank account, your relationships as the screen. Most people live their lives trying to change the movie by manipulating the screen. They run up to the screen and try to scrub off the shadows. They try to rearrange the characters. They fight with the images. And they wonder why nothing changes, or why, if things do change, they quickly revert back to the old story. This is the definition of futility. You cannot change the picture by fighting the screen. Fox taught that real transformation happens when you turn your attention away from the screen and work with the projector. The projector is your own state of consciousness. When you change the film in the projector, When you change your thoughts, your beliefs, and your mental atmosphere, the movie on the screen must change. It has no choice. It is law. Your consciousness operates through various levels, much like the floors of a tall building. The ground floor is your everyday awareness. This is the collective consciousness of the world. It is filled with the thoughts, feelings, and perceptions that dominate the news and the street corner. It is the level of cause and effect. It is where most people live most of the time, reacting to traffic, worrying about the weather, fearing the flu, analyzing problems, and dealing with immediate concerns. It is the basement of the cathedral. But there are higher floors in this building of consciousness. The second floor might be your creative awareness. This is where inspiration flows. This is where the artist, the inventor, and the visionary go. Here you tap into possibilities that do not yet exist in your current reality. Here the air is thinner, and the view is better. The third floor is your intuitive awareness. This is where you know things without knowing how you know them. This is where guidance comes through, not as a booming voice, but as a feeling, a hunch, a sudden clarity. This is where you begin to sense the divine pattern. Higher still is what Fox called the Christ consciousness. He was not referring merely to the historical figure of Jesus, but to the state of awareness that Jesus lived in and demonstrated. This is the penthouse of the soul. This is the level of awareness where you recognize your absolute unity with the divine. Here you know yourself not as a separate, struggling ego, but as an expression of infinite love, infinite wisdom, and infinite power. At this level, the divine pattern exists in its purest form. It is unmarked by the limitations, the traumas, and the distortions of the lower floors. Here is the extraordinary thing: you do not have to climb these floors one by one. Like a physical staircase, consciousness does not work linearly. It works instantaneously. You can, in any moment, shift your awareness to any level. A single thought, aligned with truth, can lift you instantly from the basement of limitation to the penthouse of infinite possibility. This is why Emmet Fox placed such tremendous emphasis on the quality of our thinking. He famously said, "There is no such thing as an insignificant thought." He understood that thoughts are not just wisps of smoke that pass through your head. They are things. They are forces. Every thought is a seed planted in the fertile soil of your subconscious mind. Consciousness is neutral, like the soil. It does not care what you plant. If you plant corn, you get corn. If you plant nightshade, you get poison. It will simply return to you the fruit of the seed you have sown. Most people plant weeds all day long, thoughts of worry, criticism, fear, and rehearsing old hurts. And then they are surprised when their life garden is overgrown with brambles. But here is where it gets interesting. The divine pattern within you is constantly broadcasting thoughts of its own. It is like a radio station that never goes off the air. It is broadcasting the signal of wholeness. It is broadcasting the signal of abundance. It is broadcasting the signal of love. These thoughts are always available to you, but they are often drowned out by the static. They are drowned out by the louder, more insistent thoughts of the false self, the conditioning of the world. Learning to embody the divine pattern is, therefore, a process of tuning your radio. It is learning to turn the dial away from the station of fear and lack, and tune it into the station of truth and dominion. The science of consciousness reveals that your brain is not the creator of your thoughts. It is the receiver. You are picking up and processing the thoughts that exist in the frequency you are attuned to. This explains why two people can be in the exact same situation and experience two completely different realities. One person sees a crisis, the other sees an opportunity. One person sees an enemy, the other sees a cry for help. One person sees a fatal illness, the other sees a journey of healing. They are not just interpreting the world differently. They are literally receiving from different stations in the field of consciousness. They are projecting different movies. When you understand this, you realize that you have far more dominion over your experience than you ever dared to believe. You are not at the mercy of random thoughts that pop into your head. You can choose the station. You can consciously align with the frequency of the divine pattern. This requires what Fox called mental diet. Just as you would not eat garbage if you wanted a healthy body, you cannot afford to dwell on garbage thoughts if you want a healthy, prosperous life. The foundation is understanding that consciousness responds to three things: intention, attention, and recognition. When you intend to align with your highest nature, you set the direction. When you pay attention to the thoughts and feelings that come from that high level, you give them energy. And when you recognize these higher thoughts as your true reality, rather than the mental chatter of the world, your consciousness begins to reorganize itself around this higher pattern. This is not positive thinking in the superficial sense. We are not talking about pasting a smile over a broken leg. We are talking about the deep recognition that the leg is whole in the divine mind. We are talking about the scientific understanding that at the core of your being, you are already perfect. The thoughts that flow from this recognition are not affirmations you are trying to use to convince yourself. They are truths you are remembering. The science of consciousness also reveals why the divine pattern is so powerfully transformative. This pattern is the organizing principle of the universe. When you align with it, you are aligning with the very force that spins the planets and grows the flowers. You are plugging into the infinite intelligence that knows how to heal every illness, solve every problem, and create every good thing. This intelligence does not work through struggle. It works through the law of least effort. Look at nature. Grass does not strain to grow. The sun does not struggle to shine. The fish do not take courses on how to swim. They are simply in alignment with the pattern of their being. When you align with the divine pattern, life ceases to be a battle. You stop swimming upstream. You begin to be carried by the mighty current of divine good. Understanding this science gives you confidence. When you know that consciousness is primary and that physical experience must follow consciousness, you can stand firm. You can look at a bank account that says 0 and know that it is a temporary shadow while your consciousness holds the pattern of infinite supply. You can look at a medical report and know it is a report on the past, not a prophecy of the future, because you are holding the pattern of perfect life. You do not need to figure out how the transformation will happen. That is the work of the blueprint. Your job is not to be the architect. Your job is to live in the house. Your job is to maintain the alignment. The divine pattern is your reality. The question is, are you tuning into it? In the next part of this series, we will expose the specific false patterns, the viruses in the software, that have been keeping you from this reality. We will look them in the face, and we will learn the specific mental tools to dissolve them. But for now, rest in this truth. You are the cathedral. The light is on upstairs, and you are invited to ascend. In the first part of this transmission, we established a fundamental truth. You are not a random accident of biology. You are a cathedral of the spirit. Within you lies a divine pattern, a perfect blueprint for health, abundance, and purpose that is broadcasting its signal at every moment. We explored the science of consciousness, understanding that your mind is the projector and your life is the screen. But now we must face a difficult question. If this divine pattern is real, and if it is already within us, why is our daily experience so often marked by struggle? Why is there sickness? Why is there poverty? Why is there loneliness and fear? If the blueprint is perfect, why is the building crumbling? The answer lies not in the blueprint, but in the lens through which we are projecting it. We have allowed our consciousness to become clouded by false patterns, mental viruses that distort the light of truth. Before we can fully embody the divine pattern, we must recognize the nature of the interference. Emmet Fox taught that most human suffering comes not from external circumstances, though it certainly looks that way, but from false patterns of thought that we have unconsciously accepted as reality. These false patterns are like viruses in the software of your consciousness. They run in the background, unseen and often unnoticed, consuming your energy and corrupting your output. Because they have been with us for so long, perhaps since childhood, perhaps handed down through generations, we do not recognize them as foreign invaders. We think they are just how life is. We think, this is just who I am. But you are not your patterns. You are the infinite spirit that is currently trapped in a pattern. To break free, we must name them. The moment you name a false pattern, you begin to rob it of its power. The most fundamental false pattern, the root of all others, is the belief in separation. This is the deep, often unconscious conviction that you are separate from the source of your good. It is the belief that you are a tiny, isolated battery trying to power a massive machine, cut off from the main power grid. When you live in the pattern of separation, life becomes a struggle for survival. You wake up in the morning and immediately feel the weight of the world on your shoulders. You believe that you have to make everything happen. You believe that your health, your wealth, and your safety depend entirely on your own puny human effort. This creates a state of chronic, low-level anxiety. You are constantly strategizing, maneuvering, and manipulating, trying to force the world to give you what you need. You look for love outside of yourself. You look for security in a bank balance. You look for validation in the opinions of others. This is the great lie. The divine pattern knows only oneness. As the wave is not separate from the ocean, you are not separate from God. But as long as you believe you are an isolated fragment, you will experience the fear of the fragment. You will feel small, vulnerable, and alone. Growing out of separation is the corrosive pattern of unworthiness. This is the virus that whispers, "You do not deserve it." This pattern is incredibly subtle. It often masquerades as humility or being realistic. You might find yourself sabotaging your own success just as it begins to arrive. You might push away love because deep down you fear you cannot sustain it. You might settle for a job that drains your soul because you do not believe you are capable of more. The unworthiness pattern creates a ceiling on your life. You may pray for abundance, but if your subconscious pattern says, "I am not good enough," you will repel that abundance as surely as the North Pole of a magnet repels the North Pole of another. Understand this: true humility is not thinking less of yourself, it is thinking of your true self, the God self within. To deny your worth is to insult the Creator who made you. The divine pattern does not know unworthiness, it knows only the perfection of its source. When you cling to unworthiness, you are arguing with God. The third major distortion is the pattern of scarcity. This is the competitive mind. This is the belief that there is a limited amount of good in the universe, and if someone else has it, there is less for you. Scarcity thinking turns life into a battlefield. It makes you jealous of another's success. It makes you hoard your money, your ideas, and your love. It whispers that opportunities are rare, that the economy is a fixed pie, and that you must fight for your slice. This pattern is a direct denial of the nature of God. Infinite Spirit is not a fixed pie, it is an eternal fountain. Does the sun worry that if it shines on your neighbor, it will not have enough light for you? Does the air worry that if you take a deep breath, there will be none left for the person next to you? The divine pattern operates on the law of circulation and increase, but the scarcity pattern shuts off the flow. It clenches the fist. And as Emmet Fox often said, you cannot receive anything with a closed fist. Perhaps the most paralyzing of all is the pattern of victimhood. This is the belief that your life is determined by causes outside of yourself. I am unhappy because of my childhood. I am poor because of the government. I am sick because of the weather. I am angry because of what he said to me. While it is true that bad things happen and people behave poorly, the victim pattern defines you by these events. It hands your power over to the external world. It says, "I am an effect, not a cause." This is a seductive pattern because it absolves you of responsibility. It feels easier to blame. But the price you pay for that comfort is your freedom. As long as you're well, being depends on what someone else does. You are a slave. The divine pattern is a pattern of dominion. It asserts that you are a creative center in the universe. The victim pattern says, "Life happens to me." The divine pattern says, "Life happens through me." These false patterns do not exist in isolation. They reinforce each other. Separation creates fear, which leads to scarcity thinking. Scarcity leads to competition and struggle, which leads to exhaustion. Exhaustion leads to feelings of unworthiness. I can't handle this. And unworthiness confirms the victim status. It is a closed loop, a circle of limitation, and you have likely been walking around this circle for years, thinking you are moving forward, when you are actually just wearing a groove in the floor of the basement. But here is the liberating truth. These patterns are not real. They feel real. They have physical consequences, but they have no ultimate reality because they are not of God. They exist only in your consciousness, and because they exist in consciousness, they can be changed. Breaking free does not mean fighting them. Fox taught that what you resist persists. If you fight the darkness, you are still focusing on the darkness. The method of freedom is replacement. You do not shovel darkness out of a room. You turn on the light. You do not fight a false pattern. You replace it with the divine pattern. When you consciously align with thoughts of wholeness, abundance, and dominion, the false patterns, deprived of your attention, begin to wither and die. This brings us to the tool of our liberation, the power of aligned thinking. Your thoughts are the most powerful instrument you possess. Most people are completely unconscious of their thinking. They treat their minds like a public hallway, allowing any stray thought, any fear, any rumor, any negative suggestion to walk in and set up camp. Fox taught that if you want to change your life, you must stand guard at the door of your mind. You must understand that thoughts are things. Every time you think a thought, you are sending a signal to the universal law. You are placing an order. Most people are placing orders they do not want. I'm so tired. I'll never get out of debt. I always get the flu in winter. And the law, being neutral and obliging, says, so be it. To embody the divine pattern, you must learn to think from the pattern, not from the appearance. This requires a new kind of mental discipline. There are two distinct types of thinking available to you at every moment. Thinking from the divine pattern, these thoughts are peaceful. They are expansive. They are empowering. They sound like, I am one with the infinite. There is a solution to this problem, and I am being guided to it. I have enough to spare and to share. My body is the temple of the living God. These thoughts do not feel forced. When you really connect with them, they feel like coming home. They resonate with the truth of your being. Thinking from the false pattern, these thoughts are anxious. They are contracting. They are defensive. They sound like, what if everything goes wrong? I have to manipulate him to get what I want. It's too late for me. The crucial skill, the skill that separates the master from the victim, is the ability to catch the false thought in the space between. There is a split second between a thought arising and your acceptance of it. In that space you have a choice. You can say, yes, I agree with this thought. Or you can say, no, that is a lie. I do not accept it. Emmet Fox compared the mind to a puppy. If you are trying to train a puppy to sit, and it wanders off, you do not beat the puppy. You do not get angry and give up. You simply, gently, and firmly bring the puppy back to the spot. The puppy wanders off again. You bring it back, again and again. Eventually, the puppy learns to sit. Your mind is that puppy. It wants to wander into the dark corners of fear and negativity because that is where it has been trained to go. Your job is not to be angry at your mind. Your job is to gently, firmly, and persistently bring your attention back to the divine pattern. When a thought of scarcity comes, I can't afford this. You catch it. You do not spiral down into worry. You stop. You say, that is a thought from the old pattern. The truth is that God is my instant and abundant supply. You replace the thought. You bring the puppy back. This is what Fox called scientific prayer in its mental aspect. It is not begging, it is aligning. It is the conscious substitution of a negative idea with a positive spiritual truth. This discipline extends to your speech. Fox taught that words are crystallized thoughts. They are thoughts that have taken on density and power. The Bible says, by thy words thou shalt be justified, and by thy words thou shalt be condemned. This is not a threat, it is a statement of law. When you speak words of limitation, you are cementing the false pattern into your reality. When you complain, when you gossip, when you speak of your ailments and your troubles to anyone who will listen, you are clamping the chains tighter around your own wrists. You must learn to fast from negative words. If you cannot say something that aligns with the divine pattern, say nothing. Learn to speak only that which you wish to see manifest. This takes immense self-control at first, but it rapidly builds a momentum of power. You will find that as your speech becomes more positive and constructive, your energy levels rise, and the atmosphere around you changes. Ultimately, aligned thinking becomes what Brother Lawrence and Emmet Fox called the practice of the presence of God. This means that you stop trying to think about God, and you start learning to think with God. When you are facing a business problem, instead of thinking with your frantic, limited basement mind, you stop. You invite the divine intelligence to think through you. You say, infinite wisdom, what is the move here? And then you listen. You allow the higher thought to drop in. When you are in a conflict with a loved one, instead of reacting from your wounded ego, you pause. You align with the divine pattern of love. You ask, how does love see this person right now? This is the great shift. You move from a life of mental struggle to a life of mental receptivity. You stop trying to use your mind to hammer the world into shape, and you start using your mind as a receiver for the divine broadcast. Here is your challenge for this stage of the journey. You must become a watcher of your own mind. For the next few days, pretend that you are a guardian standing at the gate of a great city. That city is your consciousness. Every thought that approaches the gate must be inspected. Ask it, are you from the divine pattern, or are you from the false pattern? Do you bring peace, or do you bring fear? Do you bring power, or do you bring weakness? If the thought brings fear, lack, or limitation, do not let it in. Deny it entrance. Say to it, "You have no power over me." And immediately turn your attention to the opposite truth. If you do this, if you truly begin to police your mental state, you will be amazed at what happens. The shadows will begin to lift. The movie on the screen of your life will begin to flicker and change. Conditions that have been stuck for years will suddenly loosen. This is the power of aligned thinking. It is the hammer that breaks the mold of the past, but knowing how to think is only part of the equation. To fully demonstrate the divine pattern, to see the healing, the check in the mail, the restored relationship, we must learn to engage the heart. We must learn the secret of emotional alchemy and the specific technique of true prayer that moves mountains. We have traveled a long way together. In part 1, we discovered the blueprint, the divine pattern of perfection that lives within the cathedral of your soul. In part 2, we cleared the shadows, identifying the false patterns of separation and scarcity, and we learned the discipline of aligned thinking. We have prepared the soil, we have pulled the weeds. But a garden is not made simply by clearing the ground. A garden is made by planting the seed, watering it with the right elements, and trusting the law of growth to bring forth the harvest. Now we must answer the question that every seeker eventually asks: how do I make this real in my life? How do I move from knowing the truth intellectually to demonstrating the truth physically? How do I get the healing? How do I get the resources? How do I find my true place? The answer lies in two things: the mastery of your emotions, which are the fuel of creation, and the practice of true prayer, the spiritual technology that bridges the gap between the invisible and the visible. This is where the rubber meets the road. This is where philosophy becomes demonstration. Emmet Fox taught that while thought is the form of creation, emotion is the fuel. You can think the right thoughts all day long, but if your emotional nature is pulling in the opposite direction, you will remain stuck. Think of it this way: your car may have a perfect engine, your mind, and a perfect steering wheel, your intent. But if there is no gas in the tank, or if the gas is contaminated, that car is not going anywhere. Emotions are the flowing energy of consciousness. The word emotion literally means energy in motion. Fox understood that learning to work skillfully with this energy is essential for embodying the divine pattern. This is not about suppressing your feelings or becoming a robot. It is about alchemy. Most people have a terrible relationship with their emotions. We are taught to label them. This is a good emotion, I want more of it. This is a bad emotion, I must hide it. When we feel fear, anger, or sadness, we try to push it down into the basement. We try to put a lid on the boiling pot. But in the mental universe, pressure creates expansion. The more you suppress an emotion, the more power you give it. You create a complex in the subconscious mind, a pressurized pocket of energy that will eventually explode as illness, a nervous breakdown, or a sudden crisis in your life. The divine pattern includes the full spectrum of energy. It does not ask you to kill your emotions, it asks you to train them. It asks you to harness them. Consider the emotion of fear. What is it really? Fox taught that fear is simply faith in evil. Fear and faith are exactly the same mental power. They are both the expectation that something that has not happened yet is going to happen. They are both the visualization of a future event. When you are afraid, you are using your God-given power of imagination to visualize a disaster. You are placing your faith in the power of circumstances to hurt you. When you have faith, you are using that same power to visualize a blessing. You are placing your trust in the power of God to heal you. It is the same electricity. The current doesn't care if it runs a vacuum cleaner or an electric chair. It just flows. Your job is to flip the switch. When you feel the surge of fear, do not fight it. Recognize it as raw energy. Say to yourself, "This is my creative power currently misdirected." Then, consciously, deliberately, take that energy and redirect it toward the divine pattern. Use the adrenaline of fear to fuel the intensity of your prayer. Turn the "what if it goes wrong" into "what if God is even better than I imagine?" This is emotional alchemy. It is turning the lead of fear into the gold of faith, the highest form of emotional mastery and the most powerful force in the universe, according to Fox, is divine love. Now, we must be very clear. We are not talking about sentimentality. We are not talking about being a doormat. We are not talking about the fickle, emotional attachment that the world calls love. Divine love is a force. It is a spiritual law. It is the recognition of God in all things. Fox famously said, "There is no difficulty that enough love will not conquer, no disease that enough love will not heal, no door that enough love will not open." Why? Because love is the nature of the divine pattern. When you are in a state of bitterness, resentment, or hatred, you are kinked the hose. You are blocking the flow of the divine blueprint. You are vibrating at a frequency that is incompatible with your good. If you are holding a grudge, you are blocking your own prayer. You cannot ask for freedom while you are mentally imprisoning someone else with your judgment. You cannot ask for health while you are feeding the poison of resentment to your own cells. To embody the divine pattern, you must practice the daily art of forgiveness. Forgiveness is not condoning bad behavior. It is simply releasing the hot coal you are holding in your hand. It is refusing to let the past occupy your present. When you release the resentment, you unclog the pipe. You allow the emotional energy to flow freely again. And suddenly, without effort, the demonstration you have been waiting for appears. Not because you forced it, but because you stopped resisting it with your own anger. We have aligned our thoughts. We have harmonized our emotions. Now we use the specific tool that brings the divine pattern into visibility. We use the law of true prayer. Emmet Fox was very clear: prayer is not begging. It is not pleading with a reluctant God to change his mind. It is not explaining your problems to the universe. Infinite intelligence already knows everything. Common prayer often reinforces the problem. A person says, "Oh God, please heal this terrible sickness. It is so painful. I am so scared." Do you see what is happening there? The person is affirming the reality of the sickness. They are focusing on the pain. They are praying from the problem, not from the solution. True prayer, what Fox called scientific prayer, or treatment, is the deliberate act of adjusting your own consciousness so that the divine pattern can flow through it without obstruction. It is not changing God, it is changing you. The most famous technique Fox gave the world is deceptively simple. He called it the golden key. The rule is this: stop thinking about the difficulty, whatever it is, and think about God instead. That is it. It sounds too simple to be true, but it is the most difficult and effective thing you will ever do. When you are in debt, your mind wants to obsess about the bills. The golden key says stop. Think about God. Think about God as infinite supply. Think about God as the owner of the cattle on 1,000 hills. When you are sick, your mind wants to monitor the symptoms. The golden key says stop. Think about God as perfect life. Think about God as the vitality that animates the sun. You do not ignore the problem in a delusional way. You simply refuse to give it your mental power. You displace the thought of the problem with the thought of the divine. By the law of mind, two contradictory thoughts cannot exist in the same space at the same time. If you are truly thinking about the omnipotence of God, you cannot simultaneously be afraid of a condition. For a more formal approach to manifesting the divine pattern, we can break down scientific prayer into 4 distinct steps. This is how you treat a situation. You begin by turning away from the world and turning inward. You acknowledge the one fundamental truth: there is only one power, one presence, and one mind in the universe. This power is God. It is all good, all loving, and all powerful. You remind yourself that there is no opposing power. There is no devil that can fight against God. There is only light. Darkness is merely the absence of it. You recognize that you are not separate from this power. You affirms, I am one with this infinite mind. Its life is my life. Its intelligence is my intelligence. The divine pattern is my pattern. You drop the sense of separation. You are the wave realizing it is the ocean. This is the work. Now, you affirm the specific truth about your situation. If you need health, you do not ask for it. You realize it. You affirm, because I am one with God, my body is the temple of the living Spirit. The divine pattern of my body is perfection. Every cell is now vibrating with the life of God. Sickness has no law to support it. Health is the only reality here. If you need supply, you affirm, God is my instant and unfailing supply. The divine pattern of my life is abundance. There is no lack in the divine mind. Therefore, there can be no lack in my experience. Channels are opening now. You do this until you feel the truth of it. You do it until the anxiety breaks and you feel a sense of peace. That click of peace is the sign that the work is done. Once you have reached that point of realization, you stop. You do not keep nagging. You end with gratitude. You say, "Thank you, Father, that it is done." And then, this is the hardest part. You release it. You let it go. You hand it over to the subconscious mind, the great servant of the Spirit. You go about your day. You do not worry about how it will happen. If you worry about how, you have taken the problem back. You have dug up the seed to see if it is growing. Leave the seed in the dark. Trust the soil. It is growing. Finally, we must speak of demonstration, the actual appearing of the good in your life. Many people misunderstand the teaching of allowing. They think embodying the divine pattern means sitting on the couch, doing nothing, waiting for a bag of money to drop through the ceiling. This is laziness, not spirituality. The divine pattern is dynamic. It is creative energy. When you treat a situation, when you align with the blueprint, you will be moved to action, but it will be a different kind of action. It will be inspired action. You will get a hunch to make a phone call. You will feel a sudden impulse to drive down a certain street. You will see a book and feel a pull to read it. You will wake up with a new idea for your business. When these nudges come, you must act. This is God moving your feet. This is the divine pattern unfolding through you. The difference between struggle and inspired action is the feeling. Struggle feels heavy, anxious, and desperate. It feels like pushing a boulder uphill. Inspired action feels light, exciting, and right. It feels like rolling a boulder downhill. Demonstration is not magic. It is law. When you consistently hold the divine pattern in your thought, when you fuel it with the alchemy of faith and love, and when you release it through scientific prayer, the outer world must reshape itself to match the inner pattern. The job may change. The relationship may end or be renewed. The illness may vanish instantly or through the aid of a doctor. Do not dictate the avenue. The divine mind has ways you know not of. Your only responsibility is the pattern. And so, we come to the end of this transmission, which is really just the beginning of your new life. You now possess the keys. You know that you are a cathedral, not a basement. You know that the divine pattern of perfection is already installed within you, waiting for your recognition. You know how to identify the shadows of separation, scarcity, and victimhood. You know how to police your mind and choose aligned thinking. You know how to alchemize your emotions into faith. And you know the golden key of true prayer. The blueprint is in your hands. The materials are in your consciousness. The power is in your heart. You are the builder. What will you build today? Will you build another day of worry, limitation, and fear? Or will you build a day of glory, health, and service? Every morning, when you open your eyes, you have a choice. You can pick up the old, tattered blueprints of the past, or you can unroll the fresh, pristine divine pattern of the present. I challenge you. Test this. Do not just believe it because you heard it here. Prove it. Take one problem in your life, just one. Apply these principles. Withdraw the fear. Pour in the love. Treat it with scientific prayer. Stand on the pattern, and watch what happens. You are a child of the infinite. You are here to express something magnificent. The world is waiting for your light. The shadows are fleeing. The dawn is here. Go forth and embody the design.